Hello, everyone. It's Ryan Scott from ChurchSetup.com. A very exciting thing happened today. PTZOptics did a sneak peek for two things. Number one is their HIVE Studio software, which we will definitely be talking more about in the near future. But then also, they previewed the new firmware for their Move 4K cameras coming up. I don't know about the Move SE. We'll try to figure that out as things come on. But as we know, the Move SE is limited in its computing power, and so the amount of features that they can put into that is a bit limited. With the Move 4K, they've not reached the potential that system can handle, and so most of these new things are for the Move 4K. But I do anticipate a lesser version, maybe, and they might say this in what we're going to take a look at, but I didn't notice it. But you might see a lesser version of this coming to the Move SE as well. But they did a sneak peek today on the HIVE Studio and the new firmware coming out for their cameras. So I wanted to just do a kind of reaction thing, play this for you, and we'll see what they have to say, and what it means for people in like churches and education and things like that, our customers. So let's open this up and let's play this and see what they have to say.
You can use HIVE Studio.
Need to pull this back. There we go. Now it's on normal speed. So I'll turn this down. You can hear me a little bit. Let's skip through their commercial thing here.
About HIVE Studio, and if you don't know, after watching that teaser, HIVE Studio integrates camera control, color correction, and recording all in one platform. That has been a huge request. People want to know how to record their PTZ cameras. They want to know exactly the best way to color correct their cameras. And
so what he's talking about here is HIVE Studio. Now, what HIVE Studio is a new app that they're coming out with that basically makes camera management, movement, presets, and everything app-based, so better than a joystick, but also it enables remote production. So in terms of moving the cameras and all of that, you can actually do all of that remotely, no matter where you are, with this HIVE Studio interface, which we will take a look at here. And so it's going to make remote production. So hiring a source like Church Setup to run your live stream every Sunday, or, if you have someone off-site, every now and then we get a question, someone lives in one state, but they're trying to help a church in another state. How can I, produce their show? You'll be able to do it remotely using HIVE. And when it comes to switching, there might be a hybrid version of this. We'll talk about this in a second, but let's listen to what they have to say about HIVE.
Immediately on the 6th, and you can just bring in one camera directly.
Launching April 6th.
PTZ camera, or if it's a third-party camera, and try out those cool new control options. So a little bit more about HIVE. You can access it from anywhere as long as you have that handy dandy network. And that's the only time I'm going to say that word.
That's your one handy dandy.
That's my one. And HIVE is so great because not only can you remotely control your cameras, you can share them. And you can share them through multiple studios. You can share.
Yeah, so if you're somewhere running a show, but you don't want to control your camera movement, and somebody else in another location can do that for you, you can literally just share them a link. They'll open up HIVE on their web browser, and they can actually do the camera movements for you if you can't do it for whatever reason. Really cool.
Entire HIVE Studio platform. Or you can just set it to a viewer or someone who's a producer that can control all the cameras that you have inside of HIVE Studio. Alrighty, and of course, HIVE Studio will simplify your production. It's going to bring you recording. It's going to bring you camera control and color correction.
Looks like you can add ADA cameras, Bird Dog cameras, Bolin cameras, Canon cameras, JVC cameras, Lumens, just about any cameras you can add to this.
DSLR in there, or a PTZ camera, or even a webcam, you should be able to output via HIVE Studio. And this is going to be great if you want to, output directly into a vMix software or an OBS software. That way you can have advanced control, but also in your favorite handy platform. Alrighty, and the reason why PTZOptics cameras are extra special when it comes to HIVE Studio is their ability to be HIVE linked. So coming out with the firmware that we talked about, the Horizon firmware, which we'll talk about very soon, you're going to have the ability to HIVE link these cameras, which will essentially require one-time setup process. So you'll go through a couple different setup processes, and then as soon as you're done, it'll take one check. Basically, you'll plug into your camera into the next network you want to be in, and you should be able to remotely connect and control your camera. So that'll allow you to do things like color correction, as I mentioned, adjust your camera settings, reboot or calibrate.
So what they're saying here is that once you have a camera linked to your HIVE software, no matter where that camera is, as long as it's accessible to a network, you should be able to control it remotely.
Worldwide studios. And this is the process if you're going to plug in that Move 4K camera.
And this is another great thing. And this is what Church Setup is going to be looking into doing, is that you can have multiple studios. So for Church Setup, we have a lot of people contact us asking, can you, as a service, can you control our live stream? We don't have, volunteers. We don't have anyone that wants to do it. We want someone to do it remotely. Can you just do it for us? Which we have not offered that yet because there's really no great way to log in remotely and control a live stream, but now you can. So you can actually connect, if you have a church setup and you have a setup in your fellowship hall, a setup in your youth sanctuary, you can set all of those things up separately and control them all from one location. Really cool. The pricing too is free for one camera, $25 a month for 3 cameras, and then $99 a month. You have unlimited pretty much everything.
Apple desktop work with 3 4K cameras? Short answer, yes. But long answer, it depends. What kind of Apple desktop are we talking? There's various versions. It works with, the M1 chips and the M2 chips. You'll be able to try it out and see if it's right for you. See if you can, you're talking rates that you'll be able to get. Where's Mr. Richards?
He's somewhere around here.
He is.
Yeah, they're going to launch HIVE on April the 6th.
Inside.
This is the inside of the software. So we got 4 cameras here.
Platform. And it's really easy.
You can see the permissions, everybody they've got it set up that can actually log in and do things.
Manipulating my camera. This is something that we've done with a lot of our audience members. It's a really fun way just to test out the software and the platform for yourself.
So they actually have an audience member off-site that is controlling that camera in the top left.
Paul is able to control
not in the same room, not in the same network. They are controlling it over the internet.
Variations of different cameras. Let's see which cameras he's controlling. Alrighty, so he's controlling this camera here right on my desk, and he's using these intelligent cinematic camera controls, as you can see here at the top. So I'm going to cut to the side profile here of Tess, and I'm going to use some of these cool cinematic camera moves.
This is how you would move the camera?
By just moving your mouse around. The ability to zoom in with just the wheel of your mouse as I'm slowly zooming in. And then you get awesome.
So what he just did there is it's tracking the mouse. So there's no clicking or anything involved. You're literally moving the mouse, which could become an issue if you need to do something else and you have to move your mouse off the canvas. It could follow you that direction. But if you're zoomed in, if you have a single camera or whatever, you can set that up so that just moving the mouse around, the camera will follow you. And if you want to zoom in or zoom out, you just use the scroll wheel on your mouse and you can do that. So if you have 1 camera, 2 cameras, it might be a great way to easily set up, especially if you're doing a lot of manual movements. To me, this would be easier operation than operating even a joystick, because the faster you use the mouse, the further you move it away from the center of the screen, the faster it'll move. However, there's another kind of mouse-enabled joystick version that they'll get to in a second that's probably better. But now they're going to get into the kind of framing movements where you set a frame and it moves to where you want it to go.
Features like the click to center or the click to frame, as Paul is showing off some cool different moves here. And let me show you the cine frame. So we're going to do a little meta zoom here on our confidence monitor. And I'm going to double click. And you'll see that it'll cinematically zoom. So it's going to slow down your PTZ settings to be as cinematic and as smooth as possible. Alrighty. So there's a lot of different options here I could show you. A lot of you are probably used to seeing HIVE Studio, so we don't need to go into every single detail here. But for instance, look how easy it is to set a preset. Here's a preset of Tess. I can quickly select that. It'll lock in. For instance, on the right here, you have your standard PTZ controls that you're probably used to. Obviously, your zoom, your pan and tilt speeds, and even like a home button that you might be used to as well. So we're going to go home.
Having the drag bar over here on the right-hand side for the speed of the pan and tilt
and if you want to go right
is amazing.
Back to your previous preset, takes a simple click, and you go right back to that.
Setting presets in HIVE, very simple.
You can easily delete those presets with just a click. You can even rename them
Oh,
as
I'm
well.
sorry. I was not thinking about the fact that I was covering that up.
Oh,
when I
no
was
worries
putting
at
that
all.
comment.
Ruby is the best. I've talked to her a bunch. She's so
Oh,
excited. You can set presets for your color. If you
Yeah.
want to standardize your presets
So
for multiple
colors,
cameras, you can easily
exposure,
copy
all
in
those things that
and
used to be
paste
very
these
difficult,
presets
you just do
directly.
presets now.
should we invite people?
So
to
if you have a
control it?
service that
Are we
has
brave
colored
enough?
lights in
Yeah,
the
we
background and then
definitely could.
another service that
Okay.
doesn't, maybe
We'll
a
invite
traditional, then a
people as
contemporary,
as
you'll
a
probably want
producer.
different white balances for
I'm
each of
gonna
those. You can
copy
set a
this link
preset
send
and
it to you,
enable
Tess,
it
if you
to
just
every
throw it in the
camera.
chat.
Sure.
Oh, actually, the optics camera. Well, there's a lot of different solutions. as
Okay.
You
And
have to
so what he's
sign
talking
up,
about here is very
but
interesting.
Great. Alrighty, so I talked a little bit about the
You
ability
can do
to
output.
record.
So
That's something
you can
people often ask,
output
how can
your
you
show that
record
you're producing here in NDI.
Well, there's a lot
You
of
can
different
output it through output sources on your hardware,
This is how
and you can
I
also record, and you can do ISO recording in this software. So you can isolate, record each and every video track that you have, and a lot of people want that in studios, especially for post editing.
Control it in a lot of different ways, and then I also mentioned the ability to NDI output your sources as well.
So this is how you'd bring it into your stream, right?
Exactly. Yep. If you want to bring in your video sources into OBS, if you want to bring it into vMix or another.
So what they're talking about here is you have the Hive software where you are moving your cameras and everything, and you can use it as kind of a recording studio because you can record these cameras if you want. But most people are going to be using this for camera control only. So there's usually a separation between show production and camera control. And Hive is kind of blurring those lines, but what they're telling you now is that you can do an NDI output from Hive to bring that into like a OBS or vMix or Ecamm or something like that. You can bring that in as an NDI input and then do all of your show production, your graphics, your videos, your overlays and stuff like that in that production software like you're used to, because there's going to be more bells and whistles there. And it's probably going to be more tuned to your system to do encoding and things like that. So you can just send an NDI output and bring it into your software that way. If you have hardware, which somebody asked this question later on in the video, if you have hardware, it's a little bit harder to use Hive in conjunction with like an A10 Mini Pro. But that's what they say, but it's not, because they're thinking strictly software NDI kind of setup. However, if you're a hardware setup, which is actually the best choice for a lot of churches, you can still use Hive to control the camera movements, which I think is where it's going to really shine, is not so much so that it becomes an all-in-one production suite, but that it makes controlling cameras, controlling them remotely much easier. It makes camera movements, turning on auto tracking, all of that stuff so much easier than doing it with a joystick or something else. So I think it's going to become an excellent camera control app with some bells and whistles featured in. But I think you're still going to want your production show built in either hardware or software like Ecamm and stuff like that. So when it comes to hardware like the A10 Mini Pro, you will still hardwire out your cameras, with SDI or HDMI to go into your switcher. You'll still switch which cameras are going live out to your show using the switcher like it's supposed to be. But when it comes to camera movement, Hive is going to make it available so that anyone can do that anywhere. And you can even set up, if you want a true remote production, but you have a hardware or software switcher, you can actually set up someone to log into your computer remotely using like AnyDesk or something like that. And they can control your cameras from their location virtually, but then they can control your show using that connection to your switcher software. So I think that's probably how people are going to use this if I could look into the future. But
we did get a question.
It makes joystick usage
so that's a great
almost
question,
obsolete.
A lot
in
of
this
people
case.
want to have this level of cinematic control, but they want to also still use the great tools that they use in vMix. And we're using vMix right now. Shout out to Mike in the back who's producing our show today. He's doing a great job as always.
Another question on usage.
People have come in the monitoring symbol here.
No, the alarm.
And a lot of other softwares, not something that we've offered previously in the past. Go back to the pricing. There was a quick question about that. So someone asked about the overage costs and being related to
very, very inexpensive
99 hours of
for what it
usage.
can do. Most churches,
so the
if they had to have multiple inputs,
if you go beyond
$25 a month,
99 hours. So I wouldn't worry
To
about
me,
the
it's worth it.
0.025 cents per minute unless you're going over those 99. Our web interface, for instance, standard web interface.
Okay,
So a lot of you
so
will use your
stopping
web
now. So
interface.
now they're moving on from Hive. So that's pretty much the information for Hive. So let's just stop and recap, even though I just said this a second ago. Hive is probably not going to become a production software, even though it's going to have some of those elements in it. Some people might use it that way, but I think where it will actually shine the most is camera control. So basically being a cameraman for all of your PTZ cameras and being able to enable that remotely. So you can have someone producing your show from wherever. But then you have the show production, which is the switching and the overlays and graphics and all of that. And as of now, I think you'll still want to use it in tandem with a production tool like either software like OBS or Ecamm or vMix, or hardware like the ATEmini Pro. And so you'll still have switching separate, but you'll have the camera control with Hive. That's how I believe it's going to work the best, although they could add more features and things later to make it actually a full production suite. I just think that right now you'll still use that tandem thing. So that's Hive, and that's remote operation for your cameras or even local, making it easier than using a joystick, having all your camera controls kind of right there, kind of a camera management platform on steroids. For either remote or local use. Now, let's talk about the camera firmware that is coming out. And this is called Horizon. And this is really exciting too. So even if you don't do Hive in your church or need something like that, Horizon is making the cameras even so much better now, at least the 4K ones.
Is to control your cameras, to adjust your color correction, and to control basically cameras. And this is completely free. Like I said, this will be released in date. That'll not only, and we want to take you to the next step, which is Horizon.
They're going to look at this even closer later, but you can see as a preview here,
and Link 4K cameras,
framing, movement,
like
mouse movement, all of that is in the software. So if you log into the camera's control panel, you'll have access to these kind of movement tools. So if you have one camera, maybe two cameras, this is even better than a joystick, in my opinion. If you need manual control, presets, joystick might still be better, but
on how we use this live.
And it's also now mobile friendly. So logging into your camera's control panel, you can now do that from a mobile phone. The web UI will resize to fit your mobile. And you can do all the movements and everything for your camera straight from an iPhone. So even if your producer has to, step out of the room or leave the sound booth for some reason, they can now just take their phone and make sure that everything's still working right. And you get a preview of your monitor and everything as you're moving around with your iPhone. Really cool advance here.
Your screen perfectly. It shows you all the settings. And on the left, on the desktop, 15 minutes, so it is long. So I don't want to spend too much time going.
So what Horizon's doing, it's making the camera control easier, point to click and all of that. It gives you advanced color correction. They're going to show you get color wheels and all of that. It's got an AI studio view. So if you have multiple people that you're wanting to get on camera and move between them, AI can actually locate the people and create presets so you can move from one to the other. Really cool. No software needed. You just log into the cameras like you do normally, go into their IP address and you got it. And continuous improvement. These updates, they happen quite a lot, and they're really cool updates when they happen. So with the Move 4K especially, they're coming out with cool stuff all the time.
Well, the first thing that we're going to show off is a new control scheme called point and click.
And again, this is in the camera control panel. It's not separate software.
Have your different control schemes. The very first one is click and point mode. And as you go around the video, anywhere that you like to go, just click, and it will immediately take you to where you want to be. I want to come over here.
So much easier than joystick control.
As soon as you click and hold, it will even show you a little helper arrow. That way you can figure out exactly where you're letting go. And if we zoom in a little bit on here, we can just show it off a little bit further. I'm going to click and point on somebody's head, and it just takes us anywhere. It's as simple as that. Well, the second new control scheme that we have, framing mode. It is the second option down in our control list. And you'll notice that when you hover over the screen, you will see that it starts to dim. And it shows you a little box. Anywhere that you want to click, it'll create a little frame. And inside of this frame, you can actually resize it and choose what your image is going to be. And if you push go, it will take you to that new shot. So now we have a great shot of Tess. Just to show that again, let's go back to home. And I don't have to just click. I can also click and hold and drag that box to be a little bit bigger. Let's get everybody in this shot. I'll make it a little bit smaller by dragging this down and go. And the video will automatically synchronously move every axis into your new shot. Our latest control feature is dragging mode. It is the third option down on our control list. And this kind of emulates a virtual joystick. As you move over the video, you'll see the icon is just a circle. As you click and hold and you start to move away, you'll notice that it will start to drag the video around. And the further away from center that
so if someone's good with a mouse,
that it will go.
This is probably better than the other thing in
over to the center.
Hive where you just move the mouse around.
Pan a lot more.
But you can
wanna go
still
back
get
the other way.
very jerky with this one, but it's
If I move
there
just slow
in
it
case
down
you need
just
to
a
move
hair,
it.
I will move just slightly away from the center of the circle. And as soon as I let go, it stops.
So camera movement in
One
the
of the new features in
actual
here
camera
is now
control
you don't have
panel
to
is
go
big.
through a bunch of menus that are buried just to find something as simple as automation.
Yeah.
We now have a toggle that will just switch it on. Now auto tracking has been turned on. We have a very beautiful box that will tell us what mode that we're in. And as you try to hover over any of the controls, you'll see that they are actually grayed out because you cannot enable basic PTZ while this mode is enabled. And as you want to turn it off, you can just toggle it off. As I toggle automation on, you will see that the auto tracking message pops on. And this is when the auto tracking engine will start. And now we're starting to track. And we can see a red box around Tess. And as she actually starts to stand and move around, we should see the camera follow her. All from the click of a button without having to dig through a bunch of buried menus.
So if anybody does use
Now that
auto
she's back
tracking,
in place, I don't
it
need
just makes it
automation
easier to
be
get
on
to.
anymore. I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. All right, so another automation mode besides just auto tracking one person can track a group with auto framing. To open up the automation drawer, we have a little settings gear next to the automation toggle that will then allow you all of the options available. We're going to go to the automation drop down and click on auto framing. I click the save button, and you'll see that the camera settings were updated, but you won't see it actually enable until you toggle automation back on. Notice how the message has changed to auto framing has been turned on, and we can see that the camera has already started to frame our group.
That's really cool. Especially, I mean, in churches, maybe you have a praise team or something like that.
So one of
You
the
can
new
auto
features
frame on them.
involving our presets is the ability to set pictures and names for our presets. So the way we're gonna do
Again,
that,
this is
I'm gonna
not
use
separate
the
software.
framing
This is
mode.
all in the control
go in on
panel of the
Tess.
camera.
As it zooms in on Tess, I like this spot, so I'm going to make this preset 1. As I click the set button in the preset control and I click the 1, notice that it automatically created a picture for her. I'm going to go back to home.
That's so cool.
And you know what? Let's make one preset with the both of them in it. And I'm going to do the same exact thing. I'm going to have the set button is already highlighted, and I'm going to click 2.
It's so easy.
And if I want to go through and actually name the presets, we have a little hover over here that brings up different banks. These will show you different sets of presets. So you don't have to have just 10 all the time. You can have 11 through 20, 21 through 30, and so on. And this is especially useful for when you have a morning service, evening service, or different times of day that light changes. You can have presets for any time, different pictures, and so on. As I go down here to the edit button, this is where you can start to change the names. So if I go back to bank 1 and I want to put Tess's name, I will click on the edit button and I will just call this Tess. Why not? I'll click on the check mark to save it, and there you have Tess. You can also upload your own image if you don't like the
Might
image
be
that
in
they
the way. Let
currently
me
have.
move this.
Whenever you click on this little pencil icon, it will bring up the File Explorer, find an image that you like, and we're just going to click on that open button. And it's actually replaced it back there. Not that you can see it yet, but if I click on the check mark, you can see that it actually took the image away and has replaced it with my baseball image. And not only can you change the presets, the pictures for the presets, the names for the presets, when I mentioned earlier the different banks for different times of day, you can also change the name of these. So if I do prefer to have a morning, let's just change this to morning. Or if I want to be a little bit more specific and say, here are a bunch of stage presets, I can actually change which group we have labeled.
Again, this is just in the
so
camera.
Somebody has ease of finding what they're looking for.
It's not separate software. This is amazing.
Now that we have our presets set, we can also try another automation option. Besides auto tracking and auto framing, we go to our automation menu. We can also choose preset tour. As we go into select preset tour,
so on this example, preset tour is available now. Basically it will cycle through all of your presets, so you can have multiple things, showing there, and it'll cycle to this one and stay there for so long. They have the speed so high on this one though, on the preview here, that it's like it's kind of dumb. Normally when you're doing a preset tour, the speed is very, very slow. Watch as it. I mean, it's just normally it's much slower and it just slowly pans. So I would turn that speed all the way down, but this is just a demo. So
let's just do 10. Why not? Let's do 7. And this will just keep going in different ranges. And there are other options that are on top of the image of the video. You open this up.
So yeah, all your settings now, instead of going through a bunch of different clicks, you click that gear icon at the top right, and you can do your pan and tilt limits. You can do all kinds of stuff on there. All your exposure, your color management, everything is right there at that click of that gear icon, rather than going in through a bunch of different menus. Much better experience, in my opinion, than the current version.
Will update live. Let's change a few more things. Let's go to exposure. Change it to manual. Why not? Notice the picture looks kind of washed out right now. If I try to exit out, it'll actually show
this is really cool
was and what the after is. And if you like the after, you can apply it. And if you don't, you can revert. And you can also see all of the settings for the values. I don't like the new image, so I'm just going to go ahead and revert, and it will set everything back to the way it was. And also inside of the color settings, we have a new feature to where you can download the color settings directly by clicking on this little download.
Now,
and notice
this is one thing I noticed
file.
When they upload that again,
all of our image settings.
It changes the image here when they upload this. Again, this is it's not completely released yet, so they're going to fix this. But notice when they open this, it changes the exposure to blue, So the preset thing isn't working quite right yet. With Hive, you just have presets. With this one, you have to download the settings and upload. But whatever settings are in the file, it's going to apply that to your camera, and that blue screen lets us know that it wasn't perfect. But I fully expect by the time they release this publicly, which they didn't give a date that I am aware of, it will be fixed. But now you get these color guides and stuff that will help you, the vector scope and things like that will help you expose your image correctly, which is great.
You'll be able to just go back and forth and make all of the different changes that you want to try to get your camera to be the best it can be and match it to a previous known good point. As I start to change that, you can see that the image is a little bit different. Let's go to SAE for mode. And I'm going to change some of these color tunings. As I see the image is kind of messed up and crazy, but I can always revert or I can apply. And that's the beautiful thing about having a before snapshot to see where you came from, to know where you're going. All right, so another view that we have besides basic view and color view is studio view. This is kind of a reimagined way of doing presets. Instead of doing numbered presets the way we have before, we're going to use strictly pictures. So to start, we're going to create a new studio by clicking on Create View. You'll notice it actually.
So this is really good for like a podcast setup or anything like that.
Aimed. The best place to do this is a wide
because
shot.
it needs a consistent studio. It doesn't really fit much with churches.
Left click on them, and it will
But
put a 1.
If you have different
Find somebody
lecterns in your
left click,
service,
and it'll
you
put a
can
0.
set up a studio where
Notice
you
this
know
little quick
where
bar
you
down
want to
here will
go.
show
It's
you
basically
your
just
studio.
another way to do
That
presets.
image, you can move it, and you'll see
all those on Horizon. I wanted 4K cameras and the Link 4K cameras specifically. And if you want to use other cameras like the Move SE, I would recommend looking into HIVE because you'll have advanced.
Yeah, so
control
HIVE
options
is available for
and
all
also
cameras.
color correction.
Horizon is available on the
So
Simple Track
HIVE, you'll be
3
able to add
from Huddle
all
Cam
E3 cameras,
and the
but
4K.
Horizon is that new free firmware coming out in the next couple of weeks for the Link 4K and the Move 4K camera.
So they said a couple of weeks.
Alrighty. I know you guys have so many questions about Horizon, and we even
So that's pretty much it. Some great improvements from firmware, and that's a free update. He said a couple weeks it would be out, and that's going to take anybody that has the Move 4K cameras. You're going to have all of those features. And I don't know if you noticed or not. Let's go back over here and look. There was another feature in here that they did not highlight in this firmware yet, and you can see it over on the left, voice tracking. So if you are in a studio, you have multiple microphones or people talking, and you want the camera to go to one person or the other, depending on who's talking, it looks like in their firmware here, there's a feature called voice tracking, and that would be coming soon. So that's something to keep in mind. Really cool things. They're always working on stuff. They didn't demo it. They didn't talk about it. They didn't mention it. I just see it on the screen there. And so it's going to be interesting to see what that becomes. So that's 2 major updates. Number 1, that HIVE is going to be released April 6th. They're doing it at the NAB conference, which I will not be at this year. But when HIVE comes out, you get a free version if you only have one camera. That's going to make camera control, especially if you don't have a joystick, it's going to make camera control so much easier. Go ahead and sign up for that. It'll be free for one input. And then if you have multiple cameras, it'll be $25 a month. Or if you have a lot of things you want to control, shows for 3 or 4 different churches, you can go up to the professional version, which is $99 a month, and it kind of unlimits everything. Great software. I can't wait to play with it. And we're also considering, we've talked to PTZOptics about this about a year ago, and Church Setup is considering launching a service. So if you would like us to use HIVE, control your live stream, control your cameras, do the switching and everything, if that is something that interests you, go ahead and leave a comment on this video down below because we are considering offering that. We're not sure yet, but if it sounds interesting to you, leave a comment and said, yeah, I'm interested. That would be cool. And we'll see, if we want to offer that in the future moving forward. The second thing that they talked about was the firmware update for the camera, which is going to make, even if you have 2 or 3 cameras, having their control panels up and being able to do the click and drag, the reframing kind of things, turn on auto tracking and off, auto framing and off right there, control the speed and everything right there on the camera, right there on the screen without going through a bunch of menus is going to be amazing. Again, that's a free firmware update that he said is coming out in a couple weeks. I imagine they're going to release it around the same time that they do HIVE. So what are your thoughts? I think PTZOptics is doing a great thing. They're kind of pushing the envelope. They're innovating. They're trying to do new things to make production with PTZ cameras specifically, production more great all the time. They're not just resting. They are innovating. They are developing. And so I think it's really good. But at the same time, they're not sacrificing the quality of their products for the sake of innovation. There's some companies out there, I'm not going to name them, they're always coming out with new products and new things while their flagship products kind of suffer and have bugs and all kinds of stuff. This is not what PTZOptics does. They are by far our favorite manufacturer of cameras to work with, especially at their price point. And so this is stuff that they're just making the lives of their customers better. So let us know what you think about the firmware update. Let us know what you think about Hive. If you're looking forward to trying it out, if you think it's going to work for you in some way, we'd love to hear from you. So leave that information in the comments. And otherwise, I will see you on the next video. Thank you for watching. We'll see you.